Hey, yo! What's up, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy Pros, the home of fantasy sports. It's me, Joey P, Joe Pizzapia, and we've got another mock draft special for you today. And what makes this one so special is you can only see it on YouTube. That's right, on our YouTube channel at Fantasy Pros. No podcast version, no. So make sure you go and subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Today, it is me, it is Mike Tagliere, it's Kyle Yates, and a great guest. We've got Danny Kelly joining us from the Ringer Fantasy Football Show, the Ringer NFL Draft Guide, the Ringer Fantasy Football Draft Guide, and so much more. Danny, I've put you through the ringer here. Welcome to the program. We're so happy to have you here helping us with our third mock, and this one's going to be what we predict the GMs of the NFL are going to do. So We're happy to have you, my friend.
I appreciate that. I'm excited to try and be an NFL GM and get in their head and figure out what they're going to do with this stuff, because I think they're probably going to mess up a lot.
It's a dangerous game, my friend.
Well, I hope you last longer than most NFL GMs. I better put that out there. But I wish you all of the salary. Can I do that? I think that's a fair
that would
thing.
be nice. Yeah, I'll take that. Will I be a fall guy for an NFL team for that kind of money? Sure.
Absolutely. Tags, are you ready to kick things off here in a different way today, making sure that we have got our NFL GM hat on? And how does this change your perspective as you're kind of going through these picks?
I have to screw something up. I mean, that's just that's a given, because anytime that we watch the NFL draft, we're going to have some head scratchers, but I'm going to do my best from a logical standpoint in terms of what the teams I do believe they'll do, because we have to mix a little bit of best player available and try and factor in their needs, but at the same time not reaching for players to fill those needs. So I think it just depends on the franchise, what their history is, where their deficiencies are, and kind of predict what we believe they should. It's almost kind of like saying what they should do, but also trying to predict what they will do, because we don't want to make them sound dumb, right?
Well, Yates, is that like the oxymoron for you? Because I mean, if you are going to do this honestly, like Tags is saying, there's maybe some bad picks here to come, or maybe picks that is not something necessarily we're advising that this organization should do. But if we're trying to keep it real, do we have to keep some of these picks maybe wrong?
Well, this is going to be a very interesting draft, because there are going to be some curveballs, because we're coming out of free agency and just our perception, like I thought that I had a firm footing and a firm foundation and understanding of what this NFL draft was going to look like. And now that free agency has passed and so many team needs have changed, it's just going to be drastically different. So I guess it's up to the people to determine whether or not we make those mistakes. But I guess we'll find out here pretty soon.
All right, we're going to kick things off here with the first pick overall, which is going to be Yates this time. But before we do, I just want to remind everybody, go to fantasypros.com/contest, and you can get your Lamar Jackson jersey free. That's right, autographed Lamar Jackson jersey. We're giving it away. We've only got a few days left, so get into the contest. All you have to do is you leave a review on Apple Podcasts or CastBox of the show. You screenshot that. You go to fantasypros.com/contest. And then you just fill out that little form. Boom, all of a sudden you are entered to win that, thanks to our friends again at PristineAuction.com. So without further ado, because I hate ado, no more ado, I know it's probably going to be a foregone conclusion, but let's just be sure. The draft has begun. Yates, you are on the clock with the Jacksonville Jaguars. His GM hat is on. Where are you going? I assume Trevor Lawrence.
Number 1 overall, we're going Jalen Waddle. No, I'm just kidding. It's Trevor Lawrence. Quarterback out of Clemson. At this point, this is all just but locked in. Let's just move on to pick number 2.
All right, so there you go. You can't screw this one up. I mean, it is just such a lock. Trying to think of when is the last time, Yates, you felt like this was such a no-brainer number 1 overall pick?
It's been a long time, because, I mean, even with like the draft class of Baker Mayfield, like we didn't know it was going to be Baker until, I mean, right. Joe Burrow kind of felt that way, but it wasn't until later on in the process. Trevor Lawrence has been this number 1 prospect for the past however many years. So, yeah, it's Trevor Lawrence here at number 1.
Yeah. All right, which brings us to number 2, a team that we have talked about quite a bit after free agency fallout and how much we like what the Jets have done. So, Danny, you're on the clock now, and we want you to go ahead and make this pick for the Jets and let us know what you think they are going to do to kind of continue forward with this new coaching hire and some of the new players that they brought in via free agency.
Yeah, so I think the only curveball I think that we've had in this spot for the last few weeks is Corey Davis basically coming out and saying that he's been told Sam Darnold is going to be the guy here in New York, and which is why he signed there. But I don't know what's going on there. I do think they're going to pick a quarterback, and everything points to right now that quarterback being Zach Wilson. I don't know about you guys, but I actually have Justin Fields ranked a little bit higher on my board. I just think Justin Fields is an outstanding talent. I love Zach Wilson too, but if I'm the Jets, I'm taking Justin Fields. However, I think they're going to take Zach Wilson here.
Why do you think they're doing that? What do you think the Jets see in Zach Wilson that you think that's going to be their pick?
Well, I think the main difference, I think, between the two is Wilson's processing speed and his ability to kind of like move around the pocket, go to his second read quickly. Like, I think there's a little bit, it's a little bit overdone how Justin Fields is slow to do his reads and go through his reads and get to his second target. And he sits in the pocket, he takes a few too many sacks, things like that. I think that concern is a little bit overblown based on the way that they run their offense. However, I do think Wilson's dynamic ability to quickly make decisions, go through his reads, do stuff out of structure, I think that's probably going to end up being sort of like the deal breaker or the tie break, I guess. And so he has an awesome arm, very accurate. I think that those two things are like basically his main, traits that really stand out is his arm, his ability to throw off platform and do different like arm angle type things, playmaker, just a natural playmaker. I think all those things are going to kind of like push him over the top. And I'm also just basing this on, it just feels like the rumors and the winds are all pointing to this. Like everybody has Zach Wilson going number 2. So I guess I'm just trying not to like swim upstream, even though if I were them, I would go Fields.
I like it. The winds are blowing, the streams are flowing, and they're flowing all the way to Mike Tagliere. Tags, you are now on the clock with the Miami Dolphins. They have a lot of ways they can go, but which way do you think they're going to?
This one's really tough for me. I'm still debating it as I'm sitting here, and I'm sure the Dolphins are going through a similar situation in their mind because at 3, it's like you can trade back with this pick, and I would actually anticipate them trading out of this pick because it would just make too much sense. They added Will Fuller in free agency, but it was a 1-year deal. So, Jamar Chase is on the board. Is he someone they want to go with, or do they go with Penei Sewell, an offensive tackle? Because clearly they were trying to make it work with Isaiah Wilson, trading for him from the Titans. His life is a wreck. He's never playing football again. I highly doubt that he would play football again. So I do believe that offensive tackle's a need, but we're not hearing a whole lot about Penei Sewell during this entire process. Maybe he's a boring high first-round pick, but it's just like we're not hearing him in this range, and it's crazy to me considering he's a 20 years old, big left tackle. So it's like I want to say there, but again, we haven't heard enough buzz around him. So I'm going to say that they actually do draft Jamar Chase, wide receiver out of LSU, because again, Will Fuller's on a 1-year deal. Jamar Chase is considered a generational type player. So getting him at 3, you're not guaranteed to get a number 1 wide receiver next year in the draft.
This is fun. 2 quarterbacks and a big wide receiver. Let's go to Yates now with the Falcons on the clock at number 4. So the Falcons now have some options because maybe you didn't think Chase would go this early. So what does this change here, and where do you think Atlanta is going to pivot, Yates?
Just like Tags mentioned with Miami, this is a perfect position for them to get out because you're looking at their overall needs that they have. You're specifically looking at edge and corner. Like, this is not a great spot to reach for a player. There's not that player like a Denzel Ward or a Jeffrey Okudah of previous seasons where you're taking a corner here at 3 or 4. So I think this would be a perfect situation for them to move down. However, we're not doing that. So I'm going to stay here and I'm going to take another key position because I'm going to, with them restructuring Matt Ryan's deal, them pushing that signing bonus into like 3 years down the road, that signals to me that he's going to be here for the long run, right? So I'm going to take a tight end here. I'm going to take a tight end who is absolutely worthy of a top 5 pick. Now, he's a little bit different than the tight ends that we typically have seen. A TJ Hawkinson going at number 8 overall to the Detroit Lions a few years ago. That seemed like it was crazy high. Pitts is everything that you want in the modern day NFL tight end. He compares to Darren Waller, and he can have that level of impact where he lines up inside. He's a capable blocker, competent, but then you split him out wide. He's able to go and be a field stretcher for you, moving at his speed, apparently running in the 4.4s at 250 pounds is just absurd. So I'm taking Kyle Pitts here because he fits what Arthur Smith is going to want. That multiple tight end set, blocking, being able, and then being the receiving options off of it. So again, this doesn't necessarily line up. This is not where I think that they're going to go, but yet how we're drafting, what we're looking at right now, there's not an edge player that I think is worthy of this spot. So Kyle Pitts, tight end out of Florida, is just an absolute monster of a human being, goes off the board here at number 4 overall.
I think that from the last draft to this one, there's been no player talked about more, I feel like, in the media than Kyle Pitts, and he's getting a big trend upwards. Do you think, Yates, that he can buck the trend of the transition in year one that most tight ends have of getting their feet wet, or can this guy actually come in and be day one, game one, a game changer in fantasy?
If there ever, I'll just put it this way: if there ever was a player,
If there was a guy.
if there ever was a player to change that narrative, it's Kyle Pitts.
All right, fair enough. That brings us to the Cincinnati Bengals, and Sewell's still on the board. So perhaps Danny will give a nice offensive lineman to Joe Burrow, maybe, perhaps, or perhaps he's got something else up his sleeve. So the Bengals and Danny Kelly is on the clock. Where are you going, Danny?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Sewell. I think, they added a couple guys in free agency, Riley Reif. I think he's, like a good addition for them, but at the end of the day, they still, priority number one has to be protecting Joe Burrow in the long term, and that's exactly what this pick does. Whether he starts, maybe they start him inside at guard just to get his feet wet and then move him to tackle eventually. Maybe they start him out at right tackle and Reif goes on the inside. And I apologize, I'm probably mispronouncing Reif's name. Rife? I don't know how to
I think it's Reif. I think it's Riley Reif.
Yep.
It sounds weird coming out, so I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I think that's not a long-term move. This is that move. In my mind is it doesn't pigeonhole them into any one thing in the draft. I still think Sewell, what he's done from a young age, his movement skills, the way he plays, the physicality, his length, power, all that. I think he just is a perfect pick for this team there, just based on what they need long-term and protecting that investment they made in Burrow.
So Chase and Pitts went back-to-back, then Sewell, and now that brings up Tags with the Eagles. And Tags, arguably the two biggest offensive impact players off the board. So where should the Eagles go next, and where do you think they're going to go next with this board the way it looks right now?
Where should they go is different than where I think they're going to go because, the Eagles have been known as a team that just doesn't draft linebackers in the first round. Micah Parsons is here. He would make a whole lot of sense.
He would.
But we're not going to do that. They have another need on their team, and it's also a wide receiver. Looking at a Jalen Reagor out there, right now, Travis Fulgham is projected as a starter, which is something they basically threw him to the side once Alshon Jeffrey came back, and Jeffrey was nothing, nothing to that team. They obviously cut him. They cut Deshaun Jackson. They have a massive need. And while some people think that Jalen Waddle is going to come off the board before Devonta Smith, I'm not one of those people because I think that the Eagles are a team that needs someone to complement Reagor. Reagor's not a possession-style receiver. I think bringing in Devonta Smith, a wide receiver that I think the industry as a whole is undervaluing because of his weight, and they're worried about this and that. I don't think a lot of NFL teams are. We saw John Ross go in the top 10, a couple of years ago, and that was a shock to a lot of people. But Devonta Smith, it should not shock him if he goes inside the top 10 picks, and I'm going to take him with the Eagles here. Wide receiver Devonta Smith out of Alabama.
Wow, that will bring up Detroit now with the 7th pick, and Yates, you are on the board.
Detroit desperately needs a wide receiver. Looking at Tyrell Williams, Quintez Cephas, and Rashad Perryman as your starting trio for next season, but that is not where I'm going to go at this spot. I would love to add Jalen Waddle, but yet Detroit is not going to compete in this division, in this conference, in this league, with Jared Goff at quarterback and that receiving trio. So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give him a quarterback here. I'm going to give him their quarterback of the long term, their future. I'm going to go Justin Fields, quarterback out of Ohio State. Fields, Danny mentioned it with he prefers Fields over Zach Wilson. I'm the same way. I think Fields has a ton of mobility. He can just provide that element to an offense, but yet also has a cannon of an arm, can threaten defenses in a variety of ways. So Fields here, it's one of those situations where you're thinking about the long term, you're thinking about the future here, and so you draft your quarterback, and then you're probably not going to be very good next year. Then you surround him with that talent, either later on in this draft or with a high pick next year. So build around your quarterback. You got to have that quarterback to build around in a rebuild. Justin Fields here at number 7 overall to the Detroit Lions.
That's the 3rd quarterback and 7 picks going off the board, and that'll bring up Carolina. And Danny Kelly, you are now on the clock.
I had my eyes on Fields here, but
you did talk him up. I was thinking maybe you could get him here, but you got sniped there right before.
But yeah, I think Carolina was aggressively, well, at least they were rumored to be aggressively in on Matt Stafford, Deshaun Watson during this offseason. It sounds like they're going to continue to be aggressive, potentially in this draft. In fact, they are sort of a team I've circled as one of the most likely to trade up into that Miami spot at number 3. I'm going to give them Trey Lance here, and I think Lance has some similar attributes to Fields in the sense that he's, mobile, very good arm, good accuracy. I like Fields' tools just a little bit more in basically all 3 of those areas, but I think what they can do in that Joe Brady offense, I think it'll be really, really fun to see him kind of develop in that offense. From what everything that I've heard, Lance Zierling has mentioned this a couple times. He's like a genius on the board in terms of like breaking down plays, breaking down defenses. They've got him ready at North Dakota State to like be a pro. So I'm excited about what Lance can do, and I'm a little bit bummed about getting sniped right there. But at the same time, I think Lance is going to be a good pro and eventually develop into a really good pro. So I have no reservations taking him right here for Carolina.
I'm super excited about the prospect of Joe Brady calling plays someday for Trey Lance. That would be a very fun thing for a lot of fantasy folks out there. That'll bring up the Denver Broncos now at number 9 for tags. So another quarterback off the board. That is now 4 in the first 8 picks, just in case you were keeping score at home of what the NFL is right now. And this is why you should play Superflex leagues, because quarterback is very important. Yes. Therefore, it should be important in your fantasy. But I digress. Tags, I gave you some extra time to think about your pick. I hope you've had that. I hope that's helped, because now you're on the board.
Well, I mean, I don't want you to get mad at me breaking the streak, but what the Broncos, what they've done in free agency is kind of miraculous. They filled a lot of the holes, including cornerback, which was the number 1 spot I had them going here. I don't know if they do now. Darby's signed to a 3-year contract. Kyle Fuller's under a 1-year deal. They can retain him for longer. I think he wanted to go play with Vic Fangio again. That's why I think he signed so quickly. They retained Justin Simmons, got him to a long-term contract. They brought back Kareem Jackson, and all of a sudden, it's like their secondary needs are gone, and they have a lot of flexibility with this pick. Why not go after a quarterback? They're a team that is also, I would expect to be dabbling to trade up in the draft. And one of the players that we've been hearing a lot about is Mack Jones, and how everybody loves him and that he's not going to make it past 8 in the NFL draft. I think one of these quarterbacks is going to fall past Carolina. I do think that's going to happen. I think that one of these quarterbacks is going to be off the board, but Mack Jones doesn't seem to be one of them. Some people are high on him, some people are not, but in the end, this is the most important position on the field, and that's why teams are going to be willing to take a shot on these guys here. So I do believe that Mack Jones, where there is smoke, there is fire. And when you hear Mack Jones is going to go inside the top 10, I actually believe it. It's almost like, remember Josh Allen, when people were saying there's a chance he goes number 1, and nobody wanted to believe it. Like, he might not go first round, blah, blah. But, obviously he went higher than most thought. So I think Mack Jones is going to fall into that situation.
Yeah, and just for clarity, too, this is the first mock that we're doing post the NFL New Year and turning things over after free agency. So we have a much better picture, at least, of some of these rosters. So Mack Jones, another quarterback, all the quarterbacks right now, 5 quarterbacks in the first 10 picks.
Yates, and I think it's definitely possible. I think it's possible.
I don't think it's absurd. I really don't. I think this is what the NFL is right now, and you're in a year or two where you're looking at the quarterback prospects versus the quarterback needs of the teams at the top, and the only ones really that are kind of set, you would think right now, are Cincinnati and Miami, and that's because they were here last year and they drafted quarterback. So I mean, let's be honest, this is kind of where we're at, which brings us to the Dallas Cowboys, who've been kind of a BPA kind of a drafter the last few years, I would say. So Yates, what does that mean in terms for this pick coming up here?
Yeah, I'll just comment really quick and say that I love the Mack Jones selection there with Denver. Not because I'm a big fan of Mack Jones, but because of the fit, right? When you're talking about Mack Jones and having the skill players around him to be able to support, it's a very, very similar situation as what he had at Alabama. So love the fit there. With Dallas, you're looking at the top needs of corner, the interior of the defensive line, and offensive tackle. Those are kind of the spots that you expect them to go. Well, there's a corner here that's sitting on the board that I definitely could look at with Patrick Surtain out of Alabama. And then interior defensive line, there's not a player that I think is worthy of going all the way up at this spot. So for me, it's between Rashawn Slater, offensive tackle out of Northwestern, and Patrick Surtain out of Alabama. So I'm going to go with the more drastic need here, and I'm going to go with Surtain. I think that they definitely are going to think very, very hard about these two players if this is how the board shakes out and Rashawn Slater is available. But I am going to go with Surtain because you have to upgrade the corner spot there in that defense. And you're reuniting Trayvon Diggs, your second-round pick from last year, with Surtain there. So now you've got an Alabama secondary. I think that this is kind of the floor. I really do think this is the floor for Patrick Surtain coming off the board here at number 10 overall to the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, and look, it's always great to make sure you have those corners, especially because it's such a wide receiver-driven league right now. Having those guys that can cover and lock somebody down even for part of the time, because it's pretty hard to lock anybody down for an entire game, it's very important now. So you have to have those big-time corners. That's arguably maybe the 4th or 5th most important position on the field in the NFL right now. And just to recap the first 10 picks here, we have a trend. And you would think this would be the fantasy quote-unquote version of this draft, the way the board looks, but it is not. This is how we think the GMs are going to go. And we start with Trevor Lawrence, quarterback at Clemson, number 1 to Jacksonville. Number 2, the Jets with Zach Wilson, quarterback at BYU. Then Miami taking wide receiver from LSU, Jamar Chase. Kyle Pitts, the tight end of Florida, to Atlanta. Cincinnati's Penei Sewell, offensive tackle from Oregon. Then we have the Philadelphia Eagles taking wide receiver from Alabama, Devontae Smith. Justin Fields, quarterback of Ohio State, going to Detroit at 7. Then at 8, Carolina taking Trey Lance. We had a run of quarterbacks here from North Dakota State. So Fields, Lance, and then Mack Jones, Denver, number 9 at quarterback. And then Patrick Surtain at 10 to Dallas out of Alabama. That brings us to Danny, our guest again. You kick things off here for number 11, and it's the New York Giants, who just got themselves a big-time wide receiver. And looking from this board, I think they're pretty happy they did.
Yeah, I think if I'm trying to get into the mind of Dave Gettleman, which I don't always
dangerous place.
It might not be a good place to stay. Maybe visit. I don't know if you want to stay there.
I was like scrolling down the list of defensive tackles that he could take here. But so I guess like it comes down to 2 positions here for me. Well, it comes down to 2 players, I should say. I got my eye on Rashawn Slater, who I think would be a really smart pick for them. Get him in the offensive line. He could play guard, honestly, and do a really good job for him there, and just kind of like complete that offensive line, give Daniel Jones a much more clean, consistent pocket. I think that would be huge for them. And the other guy is just Micah Parsons, because he is so. I mean, he showed it today. This is Thursday. He showed his athleticism at the pro day. I think he ran like in the 4.3s or something like that. Yep. He's just absolutely outstandingly athletic. I know that there's sort of rumors that he has some character issues that could make him drop, so I'm a little bit cognizant of that. Like, he could end up being a late first-round pick or something, but I'm going to go with Micah Parsons here because it adds speed to their defense. He's a versatile guy. He can come in and, maybe in sub-downs be a pass rusher off the edge or a blitzer, just do a lot of different things for them. So athletic. He's basically Saquon Barkley on defense in terms of like athletic and just what he looks like. I think in terms of his body type, just compact, just a ball of muscle, like explosive, electric player. So I think I'm not super confident this is who Gettleman would go with, but to me this would be a good pick for them.
You know what? I'm going to second that. I'm going to give you a little confidence in this pick because I kind of feel like that's what I do. I feel like they've done a lot to address the offense in the last few years, and now it's time to address the defense because I think if you're the Giants, you look at how that season went for you, and they were in a lot of games and lost a lot of games late because they couldn't hold leads, and of course they would turn the ball over too. That didn't help. But the Giants defensively making a stand here, I don't think is a bad pick, and getting Parsons outside of the top 10 is certainly a win, which brings us to Tags and the 49ers. This is a team still kind of fuddling around here in this offseason. They're still trying to figure out some things. There's some rumblings about Garoppolo, some other rumblings about some other stuff. But right now, what are you rumbling with pick number 12?
Yeah, I mean, we look through the players they lost this offseason. Richard Sherman's going to be gone. Obviously, he's still a free agent, but Ahkello Witherspoon signed elsewhere. Kwan Williams probably gone. They retained Jason Verrett, but still, cornerback's a big need. Verrett has been an injury concern his entire career, so they can't rely on him solely, him and Emmanuel Mosley. So I'm going to go ahead here. And, Caleb Farley would be the popular pick. He's someone that I think talent-wise deserves to go here, but I also believe that he's going to fall in the draft now that we found out that he did a microdiscectomy just recently that is going to have him drop in the first round. So I think you're going to see someone like J.C. Horn come up draft boards. He's someone that I'm expecting to go in the first round. Is this higher than I think he was going to go? Yeah, but J.C. Horn out of South Carolina.
All right, Horn going to San Francisco. That brings up the Chargers. And Mr. Yates, you are now officially on the clock.
The entire theme of the Chargers offseason should be to support and surround Justin Herbert with what he needs to be successful. You saw this entire offensive line get, just destroyed and kind of being rebuilt on the fly. You've got Brian Bulaga as the only returning guy from last season. So Corey Linsley, they made the big splash free agent signing there. You got Matt Feiler from Pittsburgh coming over. So I think you got some pieces here, but adding Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern, Danny talked about him a little bit, and I mentioned that I was torn with him, at number 10 there for Dallas. This is just a really, really polished prospect already who comes with added versatility. You start him off on the left side of your offensive line, which they do have a need right now in Los Angeles. You start him over on the left side. If it doesn't work out, kick him inside to guard, and I think he can be an all-pro. So Rashawn Slater here, number 13 overall to the Chargers to surround and protect Justin Herbert.
And just in case you're looking from last year, two of the teams that took big-time quarterbacks, taking big-time offensive linemen, that's what you do. You double down, and you get some insurance on the pick that you made the year before with the franchise QB. You protect the franchise. Let's see what the Minnesota Vikings need to do, because, Danny, you're on the clock now for the Vikes. Certainly some needs on defense. I think we can agree there. They had a great draft last year in terms of taking a wide receiver who had a pretty good season named Justin Jefferson. But now, look, offensively, I think we all think they're pretty good for the most part. It seems like a defensive move here, but what do you think they're going to do?
Yeah, I think knowing Mike Zimmer and how frustrated he must have been last year seeing this defense struggle, I'm leaning defense, and I think the pass rush might be a real target for them here. It's kind of crazy, and we're now at pick 14, and there's no edge rushers off the board yet, I believe, right? And so that's a little bit rare, it feels like. And I think this is where the first one comes off, and I'm deciding between a few guys and trying to figure out who is the most Vikings-type pick. I don't know if necessarily Azeez Ojulari is a Vikings-esque type player, but to me, he is – I think he's like my favorite pass rusher in this class. So I'm just going to put him here because I think, number one, he's explosive. He can bend. He's got good length. He's a little bit on the short side and a little bit undersized, but he's got good length and knows how to use that length to convert speed to power, use his hands well. So I like Azeez Ojulari. I think he's an underrated guy. I think he's going to go a little bit higher than people think he's going to go. He might be the first pass rusher taken in this draft. And so with the departures on the defensive line over the last couple of years from Minnesota, and I don't know what's going on with the Danielle Hunter thing. I know that he requested a trade or he wanted to something like that a couple of weeks ago. I haven't heard any update about it yet, but they could potentially have like big changes on the defensive line going forward, and I think he'd be a guy that can definitely bring the heat from year one, at least on third downs, and develop into a 3-down guy.
So that's Azeez Ojulari, the edge rusher from Georgia, going to the Vikings. Now that brings up the New England Patriots at number 15. And Tags, give me some good news. What's my squad going to do here?
I mean, after all the signings they had in free agency, they can go a lot of different ways here. What we do know about Bill Belichick is that he loves versatility on his defense. Jalen Waddle is someone that I think a lot of people would talk about in this spot, a wide receiver, because they really don't have that game-breaking wide receiver.
It's true.
Nelson Aguilar could stretch the field a little bit, but he's really not that guy. Kendrick Bourne is just a utility player. He's a depth guy. I'm guessing Julian Edelman's going to be cut at some point. So Waddle's someone I would definitely consider here, but considering they signed all these wide receivers and they haven't traded N'Keal Harry yet, and they haven't cut Edelman yet, I'm going to go to the defensive side of the ball, and I'm going to take someone that's extremely versatile. Notre Dame linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I believe that he's a former safety, moved to linebacker. I think he could play some slot cornerback. You have Patrick Chung, who retired this year, and I think that they're going to be looking for someone that's kind of that. I know Kyle Duggar kind of fills that role a little bit, but I think that they're looking for someone long term because I think he loves the versatility of these players. So Koramoah makes some sense to them.
Yeah, they do love that versatility. They've done it in the past with lots of those guys, whether it be J.B. Collins or this guy or that guy. They like players that they can line up at different spots and play different spots on the field. Arizona is up next, so the Cardinals are on the clock at number 16. Yates, what do you think the Cards have up their sleeve?
Tags mentioned Caleb Farley and his situation going on with that microdiscectomy, and I think that this is his floor. This is where the fall stops, because for Caleb Farley, all indications are that he's going to be ready to start the 2021 season.
He should be.
He should be, but now it's just going to be a matter of, do you have injury concerns long term? Do you have the durability concerns? Because he also does have an ACL tear underneath his, in his injury history there. He's dealt with a back issue in the past, so there are going to be concerns. There are going to be some teams that have red flags on Caleb Farley, but the Arizona Cardinals, for what they need, they desperately need that long-term replacement now for Patrick Peterson, and their corner room right now is extremely shallow. So bringing Caleb Farley, if he takes 1 to 2 weeks to get ready into the season, that's fine. Don't rush him back. But yet this team is apparently in a win-now window, and so go after the guys who can help you and address those key needs. So Caleb Farley here, corner out of Virginia Tech, has just a ridiculous ceiling. Falls a little bit here due to the injury concerns.
All right, Danny, it is back to you for the Las Vegas Raiders, pick number 17.
Yeah.
You are on the clock.
Will this be a John Gruden pick?
No, he's a grinder. Whoever it's going to be, it's going to be a grinder. That's who I want to take.
The guy who played through an injury?
Yeah, exactly. I have a couple different minds on this one. I think obviously they still need to keep addressing their defense, but after gutting their offensive line, I'm leaning offensive line. I think I'm going to go with Christian Darrisaw here, who played left tackle, but I think he could fill in at right tackle and maybe even like play guard if they need him to play guard, or turn into the long-term left tackle down the line. I think he's just a really good player, plays physical, plays with an attitude, great feet, very athletic. I think he fits a lot of what they want to do. And obviously, Gruden is a offensive-minded guy, is going to be thinking about, fixing that huge hole what they have right now in their offense and that offensive line. So, they need defense, but I think right now, like, offensive line is pretty damn important too. So I'm going Darrisaw.
Christian Darrisaw, a tackle from Virginia Tech to the Las Vegas Raiders. Now we're back to Tags and the Dolphins for pick number 18.
Yeah, after taking a wide receiver with the number 3 overall pick, they're going to move back over to the defensive side of the ball. Looking at it, after losing Shaq Lawson and cutting Kyle Van Noy, they're going to need some edge presence right now. They're building that defense under Brian Flores, so I'm actually going to go with an upside pick here. He seems like he's about those upside picks. Christian Wilkins was there, Raekwon Davis are both picks by him. I'm going to add Gregory Rousseau, edge rusher out of Miami, with this pick. I think that you can go with either Miami edge rusher here between Jalen Phillips or Rousseau. I think people are just going to fall in love with Rousseau's upside.
All right, so Rousseau for Miami going to the Dolphins. That brings up the Washington football team. And Yates, clearly defensive line pretty good there. So now that they have Fitzpatrick and we have a little bit more clarity, they brought in Curtis Samuel, so we know a little bit better about what they are right now on offense. Which side of the ball do you think they're going to go with this pick?
I definitely think this is an offensive pick. However, I am torn as to which position, because there is a player who has no business being on the board at this point of the draft at the wide receiver position. However, you do have Terry McLaurin. You just added Curtis Samuel. You still obviously have another need there. You're waiting for either Kelvin Harmon or Antonio Gandy-Golden to step up as that wide receiver, that big outside wide receiver. So I'm debating Jalen Waddle, but they also have a clear need on the offensive line, and that's where I'm going to focus. I'm going to add in Samuel Cosme here, offensive tackle out of Texas. Big boy playing left tackle. Love how he moves. Just lit up his Texas Pro Day. I think that he still has some things that he needs to refine, still some things that he needs to work on, but yet if he can put those together, this is your franchise left tackle for the next decade. You had Trent Williams there for a long time. You fumbled that situation. So get that left tackle in there to protect Ryan Fitzpatrick or whoever you have playing quarterback down the road.
All right, so there you have it. Washington's make their pick. Now it's back to Danny with the Chicago Bears, and thank goodness you get to do this.
Make it happen. Make it happen,
and Tags
Danny.
don't have to do it, because I got to tell you, this is definitely it. We're going to close out and take a break here for a moment. So give me your 20th overall pick
Danny,
here. Yes, Tags.
Danny, before you get into this is life as a Bears fan. Okay, this actually happens in the draft scenario where all of a sudden I'm looking at it and you're like, oh, they tried trading Anthony Miller. Allen Robinson's on a 1-year deal. He doesn't want to be in Chicago. It makes all this sense. And can you believe Jalen Waddle fell here? And the Bears will screw it up. I promise you they would take someone else.
Well, we've gotten this far. We've been waiting for the screw-up pick, so it's only appropriate that it's your Bears. So let's do it. So let's make it happen. So, Danny, how can you screw this one up?
Oh my gosh! I want to do it so bad, but I can't. I gotta give him Waddle here. It's too obvious of a pick, and even the Bears could get this one right. I feel like so. But it makes sense, like schematically, giving a guy like that opposite Allen Robinson, guy that can pick up yards after the catch. He is also dangerous down the field. He gives a lot over the middle of the field. He goes up and gets the ball in traffic, extremely fast, obviously. So to me, it's just like Andy Dalton is always been. I know that he's not the long-term answer there necessarily, but he's always been sort of a quarterback that is the sum of the rest of the guys around him, more or less. Like he's not gonna raise the level of play of the guys around him, but when he's surrounded by good players, he can actually do a pretty good job, I think, at quarterback. And so getting guys around him is extremely important for the Bears, and hopefully they realize that. So Jalen Waddle here seems like a pretty big no-brainer.
I want you to know, Danny, you've just been officially hired as the new GM in Tags and Yates' mind. The job is now yours. You can go ahead and just continue on. You can put that on your Twitter handle if you like. Also, Bears GM, and add that. All right, so let's take a look at the last 10 picks here. At number 11, Danny with the Giants took linebacker Micah Parsons from Penn State. Then J.C. Horn, cornerback of South Carolina, goes to the San Francisco 49ers. The Chargers beef up that O-line with a tackle from Northwestern, Rashawn Slater, then Aziz Ojulari, edge rusher from Georgia to the Minnesota Vikings at number 14. At 15, the New England Patriots taking Owasu Koromoa, the linebacker from Notre Dame. Caleb Farley falling all the way to the Cardinals at 16 out of Virginia Tech. Christian Darrisaw, the offensive tackle from Virginia Tech, back-to-back VT guys going this one to the Raiders, though, at number 17. At 18, we have the Miami Dolphins and Gregory Rousseau, edge rusher from Miami. The Washington football team taking offensive tackle from Texas, Samuel Cosme. And then Jalen Waddle to the Bears. Thank you, Danny. You've made this a very happy group. I don't know if we can recreate this in a month from now when the draft goes on, but Jalen Waddle, wide receiver from Alabama, goes to the Bears at 20, which is, I'll tell you what, it happens in every draft. There's always that thing where, I can't believe so-and-so's on the board. Yeah. Just like in every actual fantasy draft that we do, there's always that moment where we all look at each other and go, what just happened? Why is this player still out there? Yeah. And inevitably somebody goes and makes that pick. Now we are back to number 21. We are back to Tags, and we are back to the Indianapolis Colts with their first pick in the NFL draft in the first round. So go ahead at 21, Tags. The Colts are on the clock.
Yeah, this is not pretty. The offensive tackles that were supposed to be here are not here. The one tackle they had higher on their board, he plays right tackle. I don't really want to move Jalen Mayfield over to left tackle, which is a position the Colts desperately need. So this is a problem for them. But we can't, again, we're not going to reach for tackle with all these guys coming off the board. We're going to reach for another need. We're going to go with defensive end, and we're going to take Jalen Phillips, edge rusher out of Miami.
All right, there you go. So another edge rusher there. So more defense for the Indianapolis Colts. Now the Tennessee Titans, who had a rough free agency. This is an important one now because, once again, we talk about how NFL free agency kind of changes the complexion of the draft. And there might not be a team that it's changed more for in the last 2 weeks or so than the Tennessee Titans. So, Yates, this is kind of important. I know they brought in Dupree, but they lost a lot. So where would you go right now, or I should say, where do you think the Titans are going to go to fill so many of the needs? Because they have lost a lot of players through free agency.
You're absolutely right. I mean, Malcolm Butler cut, Adoree Jackson cut, Kenny Vaccaro on the back end. Their secondary is just decimated, but yet You're looking at the wide receiver room, which is also decimated. I mean, Corey Davis moving on. Jonnu Smith as a receiver, he's gone. You're the only returning tight end, I think, up to this point has been Anthony Ferkser. So it's literally Anthony Ferkser, A.J. Brown, and Josh Reynolds. So I am going to bolster this wide receiver room. I'm going to take an extremely talented player here, one who I think fits exactly what they can just plug him right into that Corey Davis role. That's Rashad Bateman, wide receiver out of Minnesota.
Yes.
Love Bateman, love his tape, think he's an extremely smooth route runner. Can win on the outside, but then can also kick inside and be a valuable slot receiver as well if needed. So he definitely doesn't bring you the type of run after the catch ability that they love with A.J. Brown, but that's fine. You don't need two of those guys. You need A.J. Brown to be able to do that, and then you need Rashad Bateman to work the intermediate levels of the field on those in-breaking routes. So Rashad Bateman here, wide receiver Minnesota to the Tennessee Titans. I'll address corner, I'll address the secondary later on.
Yeah, wow. Brown and Bateman. That's a long day at the office for an opposing secondary. I just want to put that out there. If Bateman can certainly live up to his potential. Danny, the Jets, with their second pick in the first round now, number 23, back on the board already early on in this draft. We had them taking a quarterback, so Zach Wilson's already gone to them. So where are they going next with this pick?
Man, this is tough because they made some good moves, I think, on offense. Corey Davis is a good player. I think he's going to elevate that offense. They added a couple offensive linemen. They've got some good depth, actually, on offense in a couple different spots. I want to give them a running back in this draft. However, I don't think they're going to do that in the first round. So I'm going to look to the defense. And Kwity Paye kind of stands out to me a little bit. I think he's, maybe some concerns over overall productiveness, like sack numbers and all that. But big, physical, strong guy. Very explosive, athletic. He almost reminds me a little bit of Carl Lawson.
I was just about to say that. Yeah,
the guy they just signed in free agency. So, that seems like a logical move for me in terms of like what they're looking for from an edge rusher / outside linebacker, and it gives them the depth immediately, and then it gives them sort of like a guy long term that can develop into a 3-down player. So, I'm going with Paye here. I just think they've done enough on offense to kind of like wait until a little bit later in the draft to maybe grab a running back or another receiver.
You mean Tevin Coleman doesn't do it for you?
Yeah, not quite.
Why? Why wouldn't he? I mean, gosh, it's just a stunning track record. So Michigan edge rusher Kwity Paye to the New York Jets. That puts the Pittsburgh Steelers on the clock now with pick number 24, and that means Tags, you are now up.
Where there is smoke, there is fire, and there's been tons of fire around this one. The Pittsburgh Steelers have been, it's no secret, they're looking for a running back. They need to fix their offensive line, but again, there's a lot of offensive linemen that have come off the board. I think Jalen Mayfield would also be a solid pick here for them, but we're going to go with Najee Harris, a guy that can handle a workload that you want him to, kind of take some pressure off of Ben Roethlisberger. And I'm guessing that what they would think is that by adding Najee Harris, that it would actually help the offensive line in a way, because teams have to be kind of like they can't just be all full go, because this team was throwing the ball 620 times per season, where it's like, if you have Najee Harris, you're going to start running the ball a little bit more, and it's like they have to play a little bit more, not so much on their toes. So I do like the pick. Najee Harris, running back out of Alabama.
All right, so here's a question for you now. So Harris is a bit of a patient runner. Is that a problem for this kind of Steelers offensive line?
I don't think he's necessarily a patient runner. Le'Veon Bell was a patient runner.
And no one's more. But Le'Veon Bell is still waiting for a hole to open up somewhere.
Yeah, no, I think Harris is smart. I think Harris is a smart runner, and it's like if you understand the offensive line you have, but he could be a banger too. Like he can bruise with the best of them. I know a lot of people are saying Javonte Williams, and if for whatever reason that the Steelers did decide to go with Jalen Mayfield with this pick, I think the second round you could look for them to take someone like Javonte Williams, who's also a banger inside. But I think Najee Harris brings a 3-down element that they really want in Pittsburgh. They want that 3-down back.
And you could feel the fantasy stock of Najee Harris going through the roof with the Pittsburgh Steelers, with the giant fan base of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I can feel the ADP rising right now through my veins. Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock again. That means Yates, the 25th pick, so they picked Trevor Lawrence here. Now they've got another pick. They've been very busy bringing in a lot of depth, but I think we want a big-time impact player here. So who is that guy for the Jags that's still on the board?
Well, you know what? I think that you look at some of the wide receivers that are sitting here available, and you go, maybe, but they've got Marvin Jones as that veteran presence, DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault, and then Colin Johnson to be your wide receiver 4. I feel like that's pretty solid depth, and at least not at this point of the draft. Now, you franchise tag Cam Robinson on the left side as your left tackle. However, I don't think that he is necessarily someone that they want to rely on long-term. So you know what I'm going to do here? There is a offensive tackle here that should not be on the board. There, we talked about at the beginning, there are going to be some curveballs just based on team needs and how the draft plays out. Elijah Vera Tucker still being here on the draft board is a curveball at this point of the draft. So Elijah Vera Tucker is just one of those guys, he doesn't have the flashiest film. He's not going to be one of those guys that, just pops when you're watching the tape, but he is about as rock solid as you're going to find. Nothing gets by him, either through a bull rush or a speed rush on the outside. He has the versatility, too, to kick inside. If you want to move on from some of your older offensive linemen on the interior, that's fine. You can play Vera Tucker there if you do want to rely on Cam Robinson. Either way, at this point of the draft, you invested heavily in Trevor Lawrence. Go protect him with Elijah Vera Tucker.
There you go, Vera Tucker, a little protection for Trevor Lawrence, which brings us to the Cleveland Browns at number 26. It's been a while, I feel like, since the Browns have picked this late in the draft. Now that I'm thinking about it, I said, that didn't sound right. I said Browns at 26, and we've even done a few of these mocks, and if you missed them, you can go back and watch them on demand on our YouTube channel, obviously of Fantasy Pros, but, it's true. The Cleveland Browns at 26, Danny, go ahead, make this awkward pick, because it just feels weird to have them this far back in the draft.
I mean, and along those exact same lines, Cleveland doesn't have a ton of massive holes really that they need to fill in the draft, or they've done a good job, I think, of addressing all their different positions over the last couple of years in the draft and free agency. I think there have been reports that they've got Jadeveon Clowney coming in for a visit, or maybe he already finished that visit. I'm gonna go edge here because I think finding a guy that could line up opposite Myles Garrett could make them really, really dangerous. I'm going with Jason Owe. And
you got to be kidding me.
Tags got sniped.
I
think there's going to be obvious concerns because he had 0 sacks this last season, and maybe the production just doesn't really match the athletic profile that he has. But I mean, the athletic profile he has is
so
absolutely
stupid.
Absurd.
So stupid.
I mean, it's absurd. Today he ran. Let me pull it up here. He ran a 4.36 in the 40 at 6'5", 257 pounds, 39.5-inch vert.
Ridiculous.
I mean, he is legitimately Myles Garrett athlete. So I mean, I think just it makes a lot of sense. Line them up off the opposite side.
I was going to say, nobody's happier about that than Myles Garrett.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Kind of takes pressure off of him a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, maybe he needs a little bit of time to develop into that role because he's relatively raw at the position. But, I mean, man, it's really tough to argue against those measurables and that athleticism and just overall – body control, everything. It's just there's a lot to like there. I think he is going to be a guy that some people might look at him like, oh, this is going to be a bust because just look at his production, and you rarely see first round pass rushers with 0 sacks or whatever last year. So that's obviously a concern, but I think he was disruptive. He was productive in other ways, and I think that his athleticism will end up bearing out at the NFL level.
So Danny puts the edge rusher from Penn State on the Cleveland Browns, and it's funny because the last mock we did with Andrew Erickson, we had a run of edge rushers. I want to say like 3 or 4 in a row, and now it's starting to feel like that again. We've had 3 in the last 6 picks. So clearly, once you get to the 20s, the needs and also what's on the board kind of matches up there, and these edge rushers are starting to fly. And unfortunately for Tags, this seems like the one he wanted, but now Baltimore has to regroup. So I'm sure you're back into the war room with all the Ravens guys, and you're figuring something out now, Tags.
I want to throw up. That was the pick. I was like set on it. I was like, I don't even have to look at any players because like he's been lasting to this pick. Like in a lot of
this is not like the real draft where you get 15 minutes to think about it.
Yeah,
so
I know.
Gotta actually get in there and do it.
I know. I'm going to take a player here that I'm not particularly high on, but he's continually going the first round of mocks, and like Baltimore needs edge rushers like that. There is no secret about it. Losing Matthew Judon, Yannick this offseason has really. There's no way about it. They need to take an edge rusher at this point in the draft. They're not guaranteed to get a decent one next round. So I'm going to reach, in my opinion, for Joseph Osai out of Texas. I'm not a big fan of his game, but again, this is more like they need to fill this because another need is wide receiver. But again, the bigger wide receivers have come off the board. I don't think Rondell Moore. I don't think he's someone that matches up well, with Marquise Brown. I don't think having 2 shorter guys in your team for Lamar Jackson is really going to help. I feel like the other wide receivers it's reaching a little bit to take one here. So, I'm talking myself into taking Joseph Osai out of Texas.
All right. Well, eventually you got there. So another edge rusher. And once again, this is starting to be a little deja vu action here as we look at this board compared to the last one. But like Tags is saying, needs are needs. And this is also where we've figured out where we are and what's left here. And so many of the quarterbacks going so early and obviously the wide receivers and OTs flying off the board. That brings up the New Orleans Saints, who have lost a lot of players. So I don't know. I'm going to throw this out there to you, Yates, before you even make the pick. Do you think the Saints trade out here just to acquire more picks to fill some of these holes?
I think that is very, very likely, where you look at how much they had to trim this roster just to get under the cap, and somehow they're still signing people. I don't get it. But yet, being able to trade down, one, it helps with your salary hits, right? Because it's prorated. You're going to be able to move down and you're going to be able to save a little bit of money. But then you're also going to add some more picks here with these lower guys that you can then use to fill the rest of your roster with some talented players. So I think definitely keeping an eye on New Orleans at this point of the draft to be able to trade down. However, in this spot, we're not doing that. So I'm going to lean into a secondary need that they have here. Janoris Jenkins, obviously moving on. I'm going to go with Greg Newsome, the corner out of Northwestern here. He's a late riser in this pre-draft process. But yet,
I love this. This is great. I love you guys are getting so mad about these aren't your teams. You know this, right?
Like I was just talking myself into it too.
You're not actually the general manager, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean Newsome, he just makes a ton of sense for them to be able to slide in here and be able to add him opposite of Marshawn Lattimore. So I'm going to go to Greg Newsome here, corner out of Northwestern, to the New Orleans Saints at number 28 overall, and take that, Danny.
Yeah, there you go.
Wait a minute, Danny. Danny's next on the clock with the Packers. Do you mean to tell me that Kevin King is not enough?
I was just looking to make sure they didn't sign him to like some multi-year deal, but it was 1 year, $6 million.
1 year, $2 million would have been too much.
That poor guy. Can we talk about Kevin King for a second? That poor guy. Like he had like a decent career, but just that one game where everyone was focusing in on him, and he just absolutely gets destroyed. And now we all have this just absolutely terrible perception of him.
Well, here you go. I mean, now you've picked for the Bears, and now you're picking for the Packers. So this is kind of fun. I mean, you're basically dominating the NFC North here with your picks. Did you pick for the Vikings too, I think?
Give him another running back. Yeah. Give him another running back.
It
was
feels
thinking
very
about that.
Packers to just do something they don't need. They took a quarterback last year when they didn't need one. You might as well take a running back here. I mean, God knows if you get wide receiver right. So what do you do?
What's the pick here that's going to trigger people the most? That's my question.
My goodness, they're still trying to pace themselves after the loss there in the championship game.
Yeah.
So be gentle now for the Packers fans.
So, I don't know. This is probably kind of a chalk pick, and I'm going to go with Kadarius Toney. And to me, he wouldn't be the first choice. I do like him. I think he's explosive and has a lot of potential, but I like a couple other receivers a little bit better. But I think there's just so many, rumors and connections made between these two teams. Like, it is kind of what they need, honestly. They've got a deep threat. They've got Devontae Adams, who does basically everything. And then I do think they need sort of like that Randall Cobb influence type player where you can line him up all over the formation. He's going to pick up yards after the catch. He's a dynamic player that defenses are going to have to know where he is at all times. I think Toney is that. I think he's a little unpolished and could take a little bit longer maybe to get rolling than some people might think. But I think based on all the rumors and the hype and everything, it's looking like he's going to be a first-round pick, and this makes a lot of sense, for the Packers in sense like what he brings to the table. So I'm going Toney, even though I prefer probably a couple other receivers here.
If Toney goes before Rondale Moore, I'm going to just laugh at that team, whoever takes him.
Well, I mean, it seems like the Packer thing to do.
Either
it's like
more.
the Packer way. I mean, Toney, the wide receiver out of Florida, going to Green Bay. That puts Tags on the clock now with Buffalo. I don't think they need any more wide receivers. I'm just going to throw that out there. But where does Buffalo go with this pick number 30?
I've kind of been going back and forth with this all along, and I just want to know what their plans at cornerback are. Levi Wallace, they got back under contract now. Tre'Davious White's there, but is cornerback is it something that they feel they need? And that's the thing I wish I knew, because we haven't heard their name attached to many names in free agency at all. We've been hearing them the last couple of years attached to running backs. This is a team that couldn't run the ball last year. Nope. Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, both third-round picks. Is it to the point where like if you buy something from the value store and you buy it and you're like, I'm just gonna save some money instead of buying name brand, I'm gonna do this, and then you break it twice and like you're kind of like, damn it, I should have bought the expensive one from the get-go. That's me with car parts all the time. So you break stuff and then you're like, I'm so stupid. I did this the other day with a V-band clamp for my turbo. But so I'm going to go ahead and say that they're going to invest in this offense. They know it's a strength of theirs, and they are going to take Travis Etienne, running back out of Clemson.
You know what? I'm glad you did that, because I think this is what you do. I mean, it's kind of almost felt like the previous year where Clyde Edwards-Helaire went to the Chiefs, where they said, hey, let's take the running back. That's kind of the thing we're missing in this offense. Let's get that, because they really don't have a lot of holes. Buffalo's a pretty good roster top to bottom on both sides of the ball. Secondary's pretty good. The wide receiver core is good. You have the quarterback. I mean, really, this is the piece they're missing. So I like this pick. I think this is great. Clemson RB, Travis Etienne. Kansas City Chiefs, who I just mentioned, are now on the clock here at number 31. So, Yates, what do you do here with the Chiefs? Because this is another team, too, that has a lot of talent on it. So, what's the need here?
Well, really quick, I want to go back to Buffalo's pick, because this is fantastic.
Sure.
While we're recording, we got news that, or I at least saw it come through, that Buffalo signed Matt Breida in free agency. So, now, Breida I still think that they take Etienne if he's here on the board. Like, I like the pick. I'm just mentioning it because Travis Etienne, 2 years ago, I comped Etienne to Matt Breida from a running style. And
gross.
So literally, like Etienne, it's obviously he's a souped-up version, but I'm saying like from a running style.
Do you want to take that back?
No,
now,
I'm
or
saying
you wanna
from
stay
a
on that?
running
Okay.
style, you watch the two and they run very, very similar. So I'm saying it's just hilarious that Breida signs with Buffalo during the podcast, and then he takes the guy who I comped him. Anyway, anyway, Kansas City. Offensive tackle. It's got to be the top of the board. Like, I would draft two of them if I could here. So, moving on from Eric Fisher, Mitchell Schwartz, you've got to invest in the offensive tackle position. They obviously bring in Joe Thuney on a huge deal. They bring Kyle Long out of retirement. That's great, but yet you still have some needs here on the offensive line, on the bookends. So, I'm looking at the available offensive tackles. We still got Jalen Mayfield out of Michigan on the board. We've still got Liam Eichenberg, who I think is pro-ready, who you could just plug in at left tackle and you don't think about it. I think that would be a great pick. But there's someone who is sitting top of my board at the offensive tackle position. That is Tevin Jenkins, offensive tackle out of Oklahoma State. Guy plays with a mean streak. He is just fun to watch. a bully on the offensive line, plays right tackle. He can step right in for Mitchell Schwartz there, or whoever you want to put it. If you move Mike Remmers over, whatever you want to do on the offensive line, Tevin Jenkins can do it at the tackle spot. So invest heavily there. Give him Tevin Jenkins, Oklahoma State.
All right, last but not least, Danny, close things out here. The first round with the champions of the world, the Tampa Bay Bucks. Fournette's coming back. Everybody wants to come back now.
Is he coming back? Is that
no? I don't know. I'm just breaking it out.
The whole band is back together.
Everybody wants to come back, right? Everybody says, "Come on, let's all hang out together." I mean, I don't blame them. I mean, just won a championship in year one. Tom Brady's there. Everybody seemed to have a pretty good time. But look, Godwin's back. They did bring a couple other pieces back there. There's so much talent, so many names on this team. So what do you think Tampa's going to do here with this pick to close out the first round?
This is tough because on one hand, I want to say something that will help Brady immediately. Kind of deal. You know what I mean?
Because that's what Tom Brady needs, just more help.
He's definitely like good at sort of leaning on the coach and be like, hey, we should bring in so-and-so. We should bring in so-and-so. However, I'm going to go defensive tackle here. I'm going to go Christian Barmore from Alabama. He has not been picked, has he?
Nope.
I'm a little bit surprised. Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised he's still here. But I think with signing Sue to a 1-year deal, it definitely is like a Band-Aid sort of at the position. I think they will probably look for a little bit longer term replacement there. And I think he is a guy who he reminds me a little bit of Quinnen Williams and the style of player he is. He's very slippery, hard to block, like hard to get your hands on him. He did run a little bit hot and cold, so I guess that's probably why he might end up falling about this far, maybe a little bit further. But I think he's really talented, really athletic, really good with his hands, and I think he could come in and be a rotational player on the defensive line, just make a good defense that much better right away. So I think this one makes a lot of sense.
Danny, do you think that Fournette and Brown and everybody just does come back into the fold, or is that just oversimplifying things too much?
I would not be surprised if Fournette came back. I think that makes a lot of sense for both sides. He doesn't seem to have a strong market, anywhere right now, and clearly a good fit there. Clearly, earned Brady's trust. All that stuff I think is important. I mean, he's not necessarily, in my opinion, like the perfect player for them at that spot, but he got the job done. He was very good in the playoffs. Like I don't think you can deny that he made some really nice runs. So
he certainly did.
I think they will. I think they will bring him back. I don't know about Antonio Brown so much. I don't know if he's, it depends on what Brady wants. I'm guessing Brady will have some input there.
Well, what Brady wants, Brady seems to get.
Yeah,
so we'll see how that all goes. All right, just to recap these last 12 picks here. 21, Indianapolis taking Jalen Phillips, edge rusher from Miami. Then Rashad Bateman, wide receiver from Minnesota, to the Titans at 22. At 23, the Jets, Kwity Paye, edge rusher from Michigan. Then Alabama star running back Najee Harris to the Pittsburgh Steelers at 24. At 25, Jacksonville taking Vera Tucker, the lineman from USC. Jason Owe, the edge rusher from Penn State, going next to the Cleveland Browns at 26. At 27, Baltimore taking Joseph Osai, the edge rusher from Texas. Then Newsome, the cornerback from Northwestern, going to New Orleans at 28. At 29, you have the Green Bay Packers taking Kadarius Toney, wide receiver from Florida. Then the Clemson running back Travis Etienne, Buffalo Bills picked by Tags there, number 30. Yates, Tevin Jenkins for the Kansas City Chiefs, offensive tackle from Oklahoma State. And finally, Christian Barmore, who I think did not go in our last mock in the first round, the defensive tackle from Alabama to the Tampa Bay Bucks. So, Yates, any surprises here from you on guys that did not end up in this first round?
I think Liam Eichenberg definitely has a good chance of going. Landon Dickerson is another guy, offensive lineman out of Alabama. Someone who I would watch there to see what his injury, history checks out. What are the medicals? And then Trayvon Merrick would be the only other guy that I consistently see in industry mock drafts. There, a safety out of TCU. But looking at the available, or the team needs for the players that we selected there at the back end of the first round, there wasn't really one that I thought needed a safety. So it makes sense that he was left out here, but I would expect him to go off the board early second.
All right, Tags, how about you? Any surprises here in the draft, or surprises who wasn't drafted?
No, I mean, Rondale Moore, I would have thought would have gone over Toney, but I don't think it's crazy because we've heard whispers about Toney going in the first round. I think a lot of the picks make sense, honestly. I think it was a good mock draft. Obviously, there's going to be some trades that shake up the entire thing, move players up and down, but in the end, I think this is overall a good mock.
All right, Danny Kelly, I want to thank you so much for joining us and spending some quality time. You can obviously follow him on Twitter at Danny B. Kelly. Danny, what do you want to plug here on the show? What do you guys got going on here at The Ringer?
Sure. Do a couple podcasts every week, the Ringer Fantasy Football Show, and then I also do a show with Danny Heifetz on the Ringer NFL show called The Big Board, talking draft. And check out the NFL Draft Guide at theringer.com. It's been sort of like my baby for the last few months, so working on that hard.
There you go. Take care of the baby. Take care of the baby, Danny. That's what you got to do. You got to feed the baby, change the baby, make sure the baby is ready to go.
Constant attention.
Constant attention. And we've got almost a month now to the NFL draft, so you can mark your calendars for that, and we will bring it to you streaming live here as well, so you can watch all that fallout with all of us here at Fantasy Pros, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get involved in all of that too. That's Fantasy Pros over on YouTube. And don't forget, go to fantasypros.com/contest and get in on that Lamar Jackson signed jersey giveaway thanks to our friends at PristineAuction.com. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Tags and Yates and our guest Danny Kelly, we'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.